Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for coming this beautiful Sunday for the Dharma Talk portion of our Sunday Dharma program. This morning, giving our introductory talk is going to be David Barnes, a Dharma teacher here in the Quantum School of Zen. David has been practicing for 25 years with the Providence Zen Center in the Quantum School of Zen, and has been a Dharma teacher for almost half of that time, for about 10 years or so. He lives here in Middletown, Rhode Island, and has a wife and 18-year-old daughter, as well as a few dogs. In his professional life, he works as both an artist and an art teacher. And then answering questions this morning is going to be Terry Cronin Topsham. Terry Cronin Topsham started practicing Zen and Christian contemplation in 1980 while a student at Yale Divinity School. Since 1986, he has trained in the Quantum School of Zen and received inka from Zen Master Soeng Hyang in April 2014. He is the guiding teacher of the Northern Light Zen Center in Topsham, Maine. For over 20 years, he has worked in a variety of roles for hospice programs and serves as a retired hospice chaplain. He lives in Maine and has one adult son. So thank you both for your talks this morning.
Thank you. I want to hear more about the mandible surgery. That was way more interesting than what I have to say, I'm sure. Doesn't anybody want to come closer? I feel like it's miles away. It's like one of those lecture halls, you know. Turn up my mic? And how? Oh. Yeah, turn it up. Thank you, I appreciate that. That's better. That was weird. Yeah, so I guess I'm going to say a little bit about a Dharma talk in general, since this is like an introductory talk, you know. In case this is the first Dharma talk you've heard, here's what it is. It's not really a lecture, okay? I know it looks like one. I feel like I'm in a lecture hall, but what this is it's more like a chance for communication between myself and you. Excuse me. Because the thing is, I don't have anything special to give you that you don't already have. All right? I'm not like some great, amazing teacher who can give you something that you otherwise would not already previously be in possession of. So for that reason, what it actually is more of a chance for us to set up a situation where communication is possible between us, okay? So even, it's interesting, like I've given a lot of Dharma talks and like some are good, some are not so good, you know. Sometimes people say, wow, I remember you said this or that, and most of the time I don't remember. But even if I just babble incoherently, it can still be a really good Dharma talk, you know, maybe better if you're listening closely and if I'm present when I'm talking to you, okay? That's actually the Dharma talk, and maybe we should call it like a Dharma, Dharma conversation, Dharma dialogue, you know, because there is a back and forth, even though I'm talking, but the listening is just as important. Does that make sense? So now that that's clear. I had a lot of things I was going to talk about, you know, like I always get slightly worried when I'm asked to give a Dharma talk. And I had all these plans, but then something happened last night and I thought I'd talk about that instead, which is, it's about my dog. As he said in the intro, I have a couple dogs. One dog is an older Labradoodle. She's 12. Lucy is her name. And Lucy is one of those like great dogs you can have in your life if you're a dog person. You know, you get like one or two really great dogs in your life if you're lucky. So Lucy, my daughter described Lucy as a human in a dog's outfit or something like that, right? Because she seems very human. And anyway, she's very expressive, and she has this way of communicating when she needs something, which is quite funny. Like if she wants a drink of water, what she'll do is she'll just stand there in the kitchen and look in the general direction of her bowl, and then she'll always just bark once. She's like, woof. And then she'll like look at you, you know. And if you don't, nothing happens, like she'll just sit, she'll be like immobile. 5 minutes go by and then woof, you know. And so it's really funny. So she'll do that. She wants to go out. She wants food. She wants whatever she wants. So middle of the night, last night, 3 a.m, I wake up and I thought, well, what woke me up? I thought, did Lucy bark or am I just dreaming? And then a few minutes go by and, you know, woof, like, okay. So normally she's a heavy sleeper. So there's really just a couple possibilities. One is that something's wrong with her, you know, physically, she's not feeling well. Maybe she needs to go outside, she needs a drink of water, or else maybe she's scared. The only thing that really scares her is like fireworks and thunderstorm and stuff like that. So my first thought is thunderstorm, but it's all quiet. So then I get a little bit worried, maybe she's sick, you know, because she is kind of old. So I get up and she's in the kind of the area outside her bedroom and she's just standing there looking miserable. And so I keep saying, you want to go outside, you want a drink, you want this, you want that, and she's just, woof, you know, so like, what am I going to do with her? You know, like I was getting, I don't know, I was like, I want to go back to sleep. That's what I was probably thinking, but I was also quite worried about her. So eventually I kind of corral her back into the bedroom, get her to lie down, I'm like talking to her, you know, it's going to be okay, you're fine, she's shaking. I'm like, what is going on? And then all of a sudden, way, way far away, I hear, boom, a little bit of thunder. And I was like, that's it. She heard the storm like half an hour or something before we did, you know, or she could sense it. So as soon as I heard that, I was like, okay, that's the problem, which is good because now I know what to do, which is basically nothing. Just talk to her and hope the thunderstorm passes quickly, you know, just pet her. But while I was doing that, it occurred to me, like, how many times in our life we're in this sort of situation where something happens and it's like we're not in control. Like, I can't stop the thunderstorm from coming, right? That's going to happen. And you have to figure out how to behave in that situation where you are not, you know, you can't really affect the big picture, yet you're part of it. And I think this happens like all the time. Maybe it is the natural state of affairs. But if you think of like how many people in the world are like in a war zone right now, or refugee or something like that, like they didn't choose that more than likely. One day they were like studying at a university and then next thing they know, they're a refugee somewhere, you know, and their house the university is gone, whatever. So things can change very quickly and then you can find yourself in these like inexplicable situations. I mean, the dog situation's minor, maybe compared to war, but it's always like sort of a situation where we really don't know what the hell's going on. Like, seemingly, you know, like why, maybe if suddenly you're in a hospital, you know, you're sick or your parents are sick and you think like, how did this happen? What should I do? So that's when the Zen practice is kind of interesting and helpful. Because if you're present completely in those situations and you're observing closely, a lot of times the correct way to behave will just appear. You know, like it was easy with the dog. I heard the thunder. Okay, now I know what to do. But even in like situations that seem rather hopeless, a lot of times the right thing to do is just be present, maybe just try to help out, you know, comfort somebody if you're in a really tough situation. So Zen practice, in a sense, is like the art of observation, observing the moment, being very, very present in the moment. And that's what we were doing when we were sitting, right? That's all that is really required of you. That's a very simple situation. The air conditioner turns off, and then suddenly you can hear the birds clearly, right? Thank you. That was perfect. I was timing that out. I just need some birds now. Yeah, so This question of observation is really interesting because, to me, because I teach, I'm an artist, as he said in the introduction, and I teach a lot of drawing. And what I usually teach is drawing from observation, all right? And the interesting thing is that we humans, we are not very good observers, as it turns out, you know? Like, so when I'm teaching, like the beginning of the class, a lot of times it's people who've never drawn much before. So I do something simple, put like a couple things on the table in front of everybody, like some apples, for instance, something like that. And I say, draw that. And for some people, that's really hard to do. And they say, I can't even draw a stick figure, you know? And then I always say, why would you want to draw a figure out of sticks? Maybe like an oval or boxes would make more sense, you know? But the main thing is like just look closely at what's there. And the weird thing that happens is people, it's not that there's something wrong with their eyes. And there's not the problem that they are having difficulty making a mark on a paper. The problem is they're having difficulty seeing what's in front of them. And like when I first realized that, it made me a better teacher, but it was also kind of stunning because like I put like a few apples and they look a certain way. Like, you know, if you get a bunch of apples together, then you notice how different they are from each other, right? Like some are big, some are small, some are lumpy, some have whatever. And then some people, they draw the apples, and instead of drawing the apple that there's in front of them, they draw like a, you know, an iMac cartoon apple, you know, or like this, like a symbol of an apple. They reach into their mind and they draw a preconceived idea of what an apple is. So like maybe they draw a stem and like a leaf. But I look at the apples and I'm like, there's no stem or leaf there. Well, why did you draw that? And they're like, well, I wanted everyone to know it was an apple, you know, which is interesting because that's like the dichotomy between observing what things really are and what they look like versus what the world that we construct with our mind, our thinking mind. So it's pretty easy to explain to somebody like, oh, you know, there's no leaf there, so maybe you just don't want to draw the leaf and make that a little bigger, that a little smaller, and then they see it and think, oh, I can do that. No, that's not that hard. But then we try to draw like someone's face, and then you have to go through the whole thing all over again, because that's even way worse because people have lots of preconceptions about what a face looks like. A lot of attachments to like what is a good face, especially if you have them draw themselves, right? That's really interesting because most people, even though they look in the mirror 100 times a day or whatever, don't actually have that great of an idea of what they actually look like, which is sort of stunning. But so like, for instance, I try to get people to draw an eye seen in profile, you know, like in this eye. And even if I explain it, demonstrate it, show them how to do it, tell them why it looks the way it looks, and then I put a person right in front of them and say, draw that person from the side, and like half the class can't do it at the first try because they're so attached to ideas in their head about what an eye might be or look like that they can't even get around that and see what is right there. It's easy to draw what you see. It's just hard to see it, you know? So to me, that was a perfect metaphor for our practice of meditation and really just life, you know? Our big stumbling block is not that there's anything wrong with us, really. I mean, we have what we need, you know? The universe is always giving us everything we need, but we have difficulty letting go of our attachment to our thoughts about what the world is and not just seeing how it is. Because if you can just see things clearly, if you practice, then it's actually not that complicated. And a wonderful sort of follow-up to that, like once a person can see like the apple or whatever it is they're trying to draw, and they have a little bit of skill with like making lines or something like that on a page, like a third thing can happen, which is quite interesting. And in the studio, that's art, right? Like all of a sudden they make something that is like, wow, where did that come from? Like there'd be something goes from them onto the paper that is almost like magic. and you look at it, and that drawing, for whatever reason, is like alive, you know, it has like a living quality to it. And the same thing can happen with your practice. If you practice and you have faith in it, and faith in yourself, and you observe very closely, sometimes something else can happen, which is like you wake up or you have an insight into your life. So that's my talk. Hope it was long enough, Terry. But you got the floor now. So if you have any questions, you can ask the screen.
David, thank you. Thank you for that wonderful, wonderful talk. As David said, and I'll echo his first comments, you know, I have nothing special that you don't already have yourself. We just lose sight of that. And so this time in the format we used, David shared his talk with us, and now we open it to questions. Any questions from anyone? Can you say a little bit more in your question? I didn't quite follow your question. Okay. What first comes to my mind is connecting it with what David was saying about observation, seeing clearly, experiencing clearly what's actually there, compared to our ideas, and then projecting our ideas onto the situation. Our relationships with people, love being a good example. Our relationships with people, we're so prone as human beings to doing that, projecting onto the person what we imagine them to be or want them to be, sort of our ideas about love, our ideas about who this person is and who they are to us. And making that relationship our practice, to see that person clearly, allowing them to be who they actually are, and our then responding to that real person. That's a way we can be making the relationship our practice. And it's also an incredible way of loving that person unconditionally. We are truly allowing them to be who they are, seeing them accurately for who they are, rather than our projecting onto them what we need or want them to be. It's often helpful. How clear can we be about what our projections are? How clear are we of what we need or want them to be, so that we can be more aware of, are we seeing them clearly, or are we seeing our projected ideas of them? So that, I think, any time that we truly, truly pay attention, listen, see, that's an incredible act of intimacy. We can speak of Zen practice really is about intimacy, about our becoming intimate with everything that is. That involves our putting down our preconceived ideas and notions and experiencing things as they are in that moment. And knowing that it's constantly changing. So how able are we to experience the moment, respond appropriately based on that experience, and then let that go? Because things have already changed. Already that moment is gone. I hope that addresses that question. Other questions? Yeah, in a very similar way, what I was just speaking of, our being aware of what we're holding on to, what we're carrying over from the past. And the more aware of that we can be, the better chance we have of seeing clearly in this moment and being aware of our habits and tendencies and leftovers from the past can help us to change behavior if we're choosing to do so, wanting to do so. It can help us to, allow this person now to be who they are and to see them clearly, and to be in better position to experience whether or not they're behaving in ways that are triggering our past experiences, whether they're behaving in ways that seem helpful and appropriate and caring to us, or whether they're behaving in ways that we choose not to engage with that again, if it had been something in our past. And David spoke beautifully about, in Zen, we speak of it as following our situation. moment by moment by moment, how aware can we be of the situation at that moment? I would add to that, simultaneously following our condition. How aware are we of the thoughts, feelings, emotions, sensations arising within us? And that's our practice, really, is following our condition, following our situation, moment by moment by moment, to perceive as clearly as we can what's happening right now, and to then respond appropriately. We perceive the situation, and then what is our function? What are we going to do in response to that moment? And then we let that go, because that moment is already past, and we're doing the same thing all again in the next moment, and the next, and the next. And David spoke nicely about how sometimes it takes time for things to become clear. Sometimes I think, at least I know, I read some of the Zen stories, hear some of the stories, and it makes it sound like, oh, if we just practice hard enough, then instantly everything is crystal clear. We know exactly what to do in every situation, instantly. I often wish that might be the case, but that just doesn't map into my life so often, and I'll connect that with the story David was telling about Lucy. And when Lucy awakened him in the night, it wasn't instantly clear to David what's happening here, what's going on for Lucy. It took some time for it to become clear. Based on the past, David had a number of different ideas about what might be happening, but he was aware enough of the situation that he wasn't just imposing all of that. They were possibilities, but he didn't just decide instantly, oh, it's got to be this. And so it took some time, and his willingness to stay with the situation, to pay attention over the passage of a period of time. Until then, he heard the low rumble of thunder off in the distance, something Lucy had perceived much sooner. And then he had a better chance of being correct that, oh, I see what's happening here, and responding appropriately, which, as he described, meant just continuing to be there with love and support for Lucy, help calm her, soothe her. But remaining open moment by moment by moment. Perhaps it becomes clear that I thought it was the rumble of thunder that was causing Lucy's distress. But then we stay with the situation, and perhaps the next moment reveals something different. Maybe it isn't that, something else. Are we willing to just keep coming back to the moment, staying with the moment, paying attention, and at appropriate junctures, trying something. We're, as best we can, we're following the situation, following our condition, and then we do something that we sincerely believe will be helpful, and then pay attention. See what comes next. Do we get live feedback that what we did was indeed helpful? Or perhaps the next moment shows us that, no, that didn't work. What I just tried in good faith, that didn't seem to help. What will I try now? So that willingness to keep coming back over and over and over again, to let go of our preconceived notions, to try as best we can to follow the situation, and to then respond appropriately in ways that will bring compassion to that moment. And then let that go and be open to the newness of the next. What comes next? What is this now? Nonstop. That's our life. Are we willing to do that? Nonstop. Forever. Yes, we are conditioned by the world from the moment we are born. And yes, our practice, as we've been speaking of it is the way, one of the very best ways for us to be able to become aware of how we have been conditioned, how we are being conditioned, and to have a chance to see alternatives, to see this situation not as we've been conditioned, but more accurately for what it is right here in this moment. That's so much of our practice is helping us to wake up in that way too. How have we been conditioned? As many of you know, in our Zen tradition, we use Kwan practice as a teaching method. And so much of what that is about entails being aware of how the many words in the Kwan stories and the questions asked of them, how those words, so many of them, are just in there as a smokescreen, as traps for our thinking mind. Words, we're so conditioned over so many years, we're so conditioned to hear words in certain
Dawn,
ways.
do you have a white t-shirt that would like fit under this shirt? That I could borrow? Do you have like a small white t-shirt?
No.
Okay, I think I successfully muted.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't sure if it was a question or clarification needed. So we were just speaking of conditioning and how our practice can help us to become aware of the ways in which we're being and have been conditioned, and to be able to be less controlled by that. And I was speaking of how many people might experience Kwan practice as a tool towards retraining ourselves in that way. We're so heavily conditioned by words. We hear certain words and immediately our mind latches on. We hear the word why, and immediately we want to tell some explanation. We want to make up a story that explains why. So Kungans, as we use those in our training, can be a helpful method of helping us become aware of the way have been conditioned, and to not continue to bite that hook over and over again. Sure. Yeah, as human beings, we often tend to respond to situations the way we've responded in the past. You know, if we're still here alive to tell the story, then there was perhaps some survival value in what we did. And we'll tend to use again things, behaviors that we've used in the past. Sometimes that is helpful and appropriate. Other times, it may not be so much. Are we able to follow our situation? How clear are we able to watch what thoughts, feelings, patterns arise in our mind? How able are we to see all of that happening before we are acting on it, on whatever impulse that might have sparked in us? You know, our tendency is to not be too aware of all of that. And so we are acting in ways, behaving in ways that are familiar to us, whether or not they're the best fit for this moment we're actually in. You know, if someone speaks to me in a way that seems to offend the idea that I might carry of who I am, and if that becomes threatened by the way someone is speaking, if I'm attached to and defending that idea of myself, then I may be responding defensively before I'm even aware that's happening. In its extreme, maybe I'm lashing out physically at that person to stop that. I don't like that, stop it. By the time my fist is heading towards their nose, already so much has happened for quite a period of time in my consciousness that I'm not even aware of. So that impulse feeling of anger that was arising, if I'm unaware of that, then I'm at much greater risk of acting impulsively on that energy, expressing it perhaps physically. And so in our practice, we're able to increasingly follow, what is arising, to see it sooner and sooner and sooner on. How early on in the process am I able to become aware of that energy arising in my being that we can call anger? The sooner on I can become aware of that energy, then the less chance it has of just controlling me or my acting on it mindlessly, being controlled by it. And so that's bringing practice to bear in our entire life, moment to moment to moment. Our practice isn't just what we do sitting on a cushion during formal periods of meditation. But most of us recognize the value of those formal periods of meditation. It's a skillful means for our practicing, paying attention, seeing things arise in our mind, and bringing our awareness back to what is actually happening right here, right now. That over and over and over again, countless times, bringing our awareness back to just sitting, looking at the floor, being aware of our breathing, is helping to really to train our mind, condition us in a healthier, more appropriate way to be able to follow our situation, follow our condition more intimately, moment by moment, and come back to what's real and respond with more skillfulness with what's actually happening, rather than my projections or imaginations or whatnot.
Harry, I have a question for you. I'm up here.
Hi, Edith. It's good
Hi,
to see you.
Terry. It's so good to see you. Thank you for doing this.
Sure.
About formal practice, when I first came to the school, I remember this very clearly. I was sitting in the lobby with a couple of other Zen practitioners, Sangha members, fairly new, and we were trying to decide whether Zen practice was a religion or not. and we asked a Zen master, and he gave us an answer that we could use. He said, Zen is a practice that allows us to become clear and to use this clearness to help this world. So I often think that phrase, it's a practice that allows us to become clear. This is our practice when we're sitting, doing formal sitting. But then this habit of being clear that this is what you're talking about, that in the rest of our 24 hours, it just becomes easier to perceive things clearly. And so I actually am wondering if that makes sense to you, and also a little bit more about your formal practice, what it consists on, and especially how you encourage yourself to, put things down when you're sitting, to come back to the floor, to come back to the breathing. I guess that's my biggest challenge is I see clearly that I'm thinking, but the thinking is cloudy, and to accept that, that's my reality. And it's very hard to accept that at that time, at that level.
Yeah, it's cloudy and often it's enticing, isn't it?
Yeah.
As as we're doing sitting meditation, as an example, if we're doing that for some extended period of time, linking together sittings, most all of you here probably have had the experience. At times it might feel boring. That might be the feeling that arises. And we don't like feeling bored, and our thinking mind is adept at jumping in there and trying to create some entertainment or enthusiasm or anything but boredom. And so we're maybe, get lost in some fantasy, whatever version, food fantasy, a sex fantasy, being away on vacation fantasy, whatever it is, doesn't really matter. It's just different versions of the same dynamic. Mind creating some story in reaction to what isn't at that moment pleasurable to us. And if we're honest, there are times where we want to stay with the fantasy. Our choice is to come back to what we're actually doing at that moment. And in this case, we're using the example of coming back to sitting meditation. And if indeed we were experiencing great boredom, then we're coming back, and there's some chance that we're coming back to that feeling of boredom. Maybe it's changed in the intervening moments. Let's stay open to what is it now, but maybe it's still boring. And so, we're those fantasies and stories that we're creating, they're enticing to us. We don't have to be ashamed to acknowledge that. And it speaks to the challenge of practice of letting go of those entertaining stories we're creating to come back to what is actually real at that moment. That's the fundamental human. We desire pleasure, and we want to push away the unpleasant. And our making a choice to come back to things just as they are, that takes courage. That takes, a commitment to make our practice, to embody our practice, to actually do it when we're at times where it might feel like a whole lot more fun to stay in the fantasy. That's the choice that we make. That's the choice that we're faced with moment by moment by moment. Are we willing to come back to the moment just as it is, see it clearly, and be able to respond appropriately? That's challenging practice, because so many of moments that we come back to aren't necessarily pleasant or fun. I'm not sure if that addresses your question, Edith, or if I'm missing an aspect of what you're looking for.
It's very good. I think it's this, it's, okay, all right. So thank you. Yes, it wasn't very good. Thank you. It helped a lot. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, David, for your wonderful talk. Gave me a lot to be able to springboard off of. Thank you all for your being here, your practice, your questions. Appreciate it. Thank you.
So thank you both again for your wonderful talks today. Just a couple quick announcements to round us down. We do have a couple of events coming up in addition to our regular programming. First and foremost are the regular retreats that we do here at the Providence Zen Center. The retreats that we do here are a wonderful time to really settle in and deepen in your practice, and we encourage everyone to come and join us if it's of interest to you. Our next retreat is going to be a one-day retreat on July 6th from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. in the afternoon. That'll be led by Zen Master Soeng Hyang, and you can register online at providencezen.org. And then, of course, for those who are familiar with us, we have our regularly scheduled Summer Kyolche coming up. This year, Summer Kyolche will be running July 6th through August 2nd up at the Diamond Hill Zen Monastery right here behind us. And as always, you can sit intervals of 3 days with entries on Saturdays and Wednesdays. You can also choose to sit for extended times. Usually there's 1 or 2 people who sit the entire month of Kyolche. We do require you to have previous experience with retreats with us before going up to Kyolche. So if that's of interest to you, please come join us for the retreat with Zen Master Soeng Hyang, get that experience in. That way you can have some familiarity with the forms and kind of the flow of the retreat so we can maintain the quiet practice atmosphere up at the monastery. Finally, every Tuesday night, we do hold a refuge recovery meeting here at the Providence Zen Center. So if you are struggling with addiction in any way, shape, or form, and are looking for a place where you can kind of work with that in a community, please consider coming. This is Tuesday night at 7 p.m., and it's led by Don Boudreau, who has many, many decades of being a mentor in refuge recovery meetings. Practice is always free. Electricity and streaming is not. So if you would like to help support us, we do gratefully accept donations. You can do this online at providencezen.org or at our donation box near the front. You could also consider becoming a member of the Kwan School of Zen, in which case you'll pay a monthly membership fee, which helps support the Zen Center and gives you discounts on retreats, access to the school magazine delivered to you for free, and some other fun little stuff as well. So thank you all very much for coming.
Thank you.
wants to.
Okay, got it, thanks.
So what do you say, these stay here?
Yeah, the nicer ones should stay.
Okay.